Chapter 31, Graduation Exam. Only a week was now left for fourth year's exams. Genki followed the same procedure as last year and asked the students interested in participating in the graduation exam to meet him after class. Fujin thought, I guess it's time to finally become a ninja. There's not much that I can learn in the academy anymore. At best I could learn another element or a few more genjutsu. If I don't attempt the exam this year, the teachers, and maybe even Hiruzen could grow suspicious. And I definitely won't receive much help from them in the future. As for tanking the exam, I am not confident that I could fake my performance convincingly enough for someone who has decades of experience. Either way, I believe I am ready now. After the class, Fujin visited Genki and confirmed his participation. Genki smiled and wished him good luck. With just a week left for the exams, Fujin started to focus on the syllabus for written exams. The syllabus was actually quite surprising. He recalled back when Genki started teaching this in the academy. He was teaching trigonometry. Fujin's first thoughts when he saw that was, trigo? For fucking 9-year-old kids. What's next? Differentiation and integration. As annoyed as he was by it, he was extremely surprised when Hana was able to solve them perfectly. He mentally screamed, how the fuck can 9-year-old kids learn trigo so easily? He sighed at how much smarter the kids here were and continued with his studies. He also wanted to be perfectly prepared while going on missions. He stopped learning new seals, and instead had his clones focus on making a few essential objects for him. He bought 2 ninja waist bags, 2 ninja leg pouches and a couple of metallic wristbands. He then had his clones make storage seals on these items. The Fuinjutsu scroll in section D of the library expanded a bit on the storage seal. It explained ways to increase or decrease the size of the storage space, as well as manipulating its shape. It wasn't very difficult as it only increased or decreased the number of space symbols involved. So the seal itself was still very basic. However, this was very useful for Fujin. In the interior of the ninja waist bags, Fujin managed to draw 7 storage seals. For ninja leg pouch, he was able to draw 4 seals. These had a lot less space as compared to the seals he made on scrolls, however, considering that their purpose was to enhance the capacity of the bags and pouches, it was very handy. For the leg pouch, 2 seals could store 6 kunaus each, and other 2 seals could store 24 shurikens each. He then created various triggers to refill the pouch from weapons in the storage seals. This way, his weapon supply would be much larger. For the waist bag, the seals could store a lot more. But he hadn't yet decided how to fill them all. He did have some ideas like a first aid kit, ninja ropes, scrolls, seals that stored elements, more weapons, explosion tags, soldier pills, ration bars and so on. For the wristbands, he made 1 small seal, on each of them. When he wears the wristbands, these seals will be directly under his palms. The seals created a cuboidal storage seal which was around 15 cm 15 cm 100 cm. Both these seals were made to store swords. This way, he could quickly access his swords whenever he wanted to. Other than this seal, he planned on drawing 3 more seals on each wristband. For the seals on the opposite side to the current one, Fujin planned on buying huge sturdy shields and storing them there. If he ever gets in an awkward position where he can't defend himself with the rock shield, he'll depend on this shield to provide cover to himself. However, since he wasn't sure about the size of shield he'd buy, he didn't draw that seal. Other than these 2, he planned on inscribing 2 more storage seals on the wristband, but for now he didn't have any idea what to store in there. So he left it for the future. On the day before the exam, Fujin, under a disguise, bought a lot of weapons. He bought 96 shurikens and 24 kunaus to fill both the leg pouches. He also bought 12 explosion tags to attach them to 6 kunaus in each of the pouches. In all it cost 65k ryo. He bargained and got them for 55k ryo under the false promise of buying again in the future. Next day, the final exam began. Since he intended to pass, and wanted to be rank 1, he aced the written exam. He was sure that he'd score full. With the absence of Teru, Nobu, and Yuri, he also did the best in the shuriken throwing competition. In Taijutsu, he still ranked 2 behind Hoka. While in the ninjutsu exam, he made sure to perform only as good as Hana. There wasn't any chakra control exercise in the exam. But Fujin wasn't very surprised as nearly everyone in his class had very good chakra control and could do both tree climbing and water walking, as Genki had held a lot of sessions on it this year. The exam also tested the students on the various basic skills that were taught in the previous year. Fujin again ensured that he'd be ranked near the top in this exam. After the results were out, Fujin ranked first, Hana ranked second, and Hoka surprisingly ranked fifth. He had improved his written exam scores a lot to be able to get such a high rank. A week later, the graduation exam was conducted. Fujin noticed that there were students from 3 different batches. His own, his senior batch, and the batch 1 year junior to him. 23 students from his class were participating. Unknown to Fujin, the exam was held by Naruto. He looked at the list of students participating. There were 68 participants from the 5th year, 35 from the 4th year, and 8 from the 3rd year. He sighed, thinking what a drag this exam would be, and instructed to begin the exam. The first exam was a written test. Fujin looked at the paper expecting some more theory questions. However, he was surprised when he read them. They weren't any theory questions, but instead scenarios were mentioned and the students had to write in what they would do. After reading all the scenarios, Fujin sighed, just basic ninja protocols, and confirming that the students are brainwashed. To think that I actually expected something good. He answered as any, ready to graduate, academy student would answer. The exam was an hour long. Once the hour was up, the papers were collected and sent to Naruto. He had 6 academy teachers check the answers and decide whether the student is ready to graduate or not. It took half an hour to completely check them, and then they provided the results to Kisho. One of the teachers said, "Sir, we've completed checking. Out of 111 students, 79 have provided satisfactory answers. Rest aren't ready yet." Kisho nodded and said, "Dismiss them." Those 32 students were asked to go back home, and prepare well for the next year. Fujin was surprised by this. Wow, they just asked the kids to leave? Won't that be demotivating? Or are they just trying to reduce the number of participants for the next exam? Fujin wasn't alone with those thoughts. One of the teachers, who taught a normal class, asked Kisho, "Kisho-senpai, won't this demotivate the students?" The ones who participated in the exam are among the brightest students in the academy. Kisho looked at the teacher. He was 2 years junior to Kisho in the academy, but he wasn't very talented and had barely become a Chuyunin during the war. Kisho shook his head and said, "If they get demotivated by such a small failure, then there's no hope for them. They would be better off in the Genin Reserve Force and will save the resources needed to raise someone more worthy to Chuyunin rank." The teacher wasn't very convinced with the answer, but didn't say anything, as this wasn't the first time Kisho had supervised the graduation exam. After the written exams, the students were tested on various parameters like shurikens, stealth, camping, chakra control, etc. It was similar to the tests conducted for Fujin's class a week back. Since the tests for elite classes were already conducted, they weren't tested again and their scores from a week back were carried forward. The academy teachers observed everyone's performance, and failed another 15 students over these exams. On getting the reports, Kisho thought, wow. That's so convenient. Now the Taijutsu tournament will be so much simpler to conduct. Right before the Taijutsu tournament began, Hokage arrived to watch the exam. He was followed by a character that Fujin recognized very easily, Heitake Kakashi. Fujin was very surprised to see him. He thought, why is Kakashi here? Hiruzen wouldn't force him to start training kids right now, would he? I really hope not. Canon timeline will be fucked up if Hiruzen assigns my squad to him. I am not sure how strong I'd be in another 6 to 7 years, so for now I really hope something doesn't change due to me. Next was a Taijutsu tournament between the 64 remaining students. Kisho arranged for a knockout tournament. So one student could fight for a maximum of 6 times. Fujin breezed through to the semifinals. In the semifinals, he had to fight with a Hyuga who was a year older than him. Fujin fought very hard against him, but was still at a lot of disadvantage. While he did get a few critical hits in with one strong punch on his right rib, another on his nose and a strong kick under his left rib, in the end, he still lost the fight. Fujin was initially a bit irritated at the loss. Damn, how exactly do these guys train? I lost despite the amount of progress I made over the past couple of months. He then calmed himself and analyzed the fight better. On other hand, it's probably reasonable. I'm guessing the elders from the Hyuga clan regularly spar with them. I, on the other hand, could only spar with my clone. Also, the Hyuga fighting style is entirely Taijutsu. I, on the other hand, was a lot more dependent on wind-propelling jutsu, body flicker jutsu and earth military movement jutsu during my spars. Removing them does reduce my fighting ability considerably. Perhaps if ninjutsu and kenjutsu were allowed, I'd have won this fight. Not to mention, I didn't even use chakra to enhance my punches and kicks in the fight. He then watched the finals between Hoka and that guy. Due to the injuries he suffered against Fujin, he lost after struggling for a bit. However, having fought both of them, Fujin knew that even without those injuries, Hoka would have still won the match. Hoka ranked first, however Fujin wasn't worried much. My points in the normal exam were much higher than Hoka's. So this difference won't affect much, I should still rank first in my class. Fujin noticed that no one was eliminated in the Taijutsu tournament. Chapter 32, Graduation Exam. For the next test, a few academy teachers brought the kids to a part of the training grounds. On reaching there, the students noticed a long white line drawn on the ground and a bunch of obstacles placed ahead of it. Fujin thought, is this an obstacle race? However, he soon shook his head denying that thought. No way, this is too simple. All the 64 students were made to stand behind the white line. Genki then appeared and announced, this will be the next phase of your exam. This is an obstacle race, and you have to run 500 meters straight to the white line that is drawn there. This announcement excited all the students. They thought, finally an easy exam. The ones who had taken the graduation exam previously thought, why wasn't this exam there the previous year? Fujin was confused by such an easy exam. However, he noticed that there was another man standing behind Genki. And when Genki finished his announcement, he looked at him and nodded. Kisho looked at the excited kids and chuckled. He thought, this should be fun. Sadly, the kids don't know that the guy standing there is an experienced Jounin from the Kurama clan. He is Kurama Illumi. In the previous war, hundreds of enemies fell prey to him and his bag of tricks. Genki then announced, on your mark, get set, go. However, while he was announcing, Kurama Illumi was making some hand signs. And when he heard go, he cast his jutsu, demonic illusion, heaven and earth reversal. As soon as he launched his jutsu, all the 64 students were shaken. It was as if someone grabbed the ground and the sky and reversed them. The gravity felt upside down. Most of the students were incredibly frightened and tightly hugged the ground underneath them. There were only 4 exceptions. A young girl from the 3rd year, who was from the Uchiha clan. She activated her Sharingan as soon as she felt the changes. 2 students from the 5th year, who were from the Kurama clan and aware of this jutsu. And Fujin, who kept an eye on Illumi and saw him performing the hand signs. He also felt someone trying to influence his nervous system, which let him know that it was a genjutsu. He was planning to disrupt the genjutsu, however when he noticed that others were being affected too, he didn't disrupt it so as to not attract any attention. Even though Fujin noticed the genjutsu, he was extremely impressed at the guy's ability to cast a genjutsu on 64 students at the same time. Kurama Illumi smirked looking at the reactions of all the students. He had used rank B genjutsu on them. He had used this genjutsu many times to disrupt his enemies enough for his allies to kill them in the 3rd Great Ninja War. Kisho observed the students attentively. He thought, this test will test the willpower of the students. If they don't complete the race, then there's no way I'll pass them. While all the students were struggling, Fujin was trying to find his balance. He thought quickly about what this test is about. He quickly figured out that there were 3 possibilities, which were, either they are testing our ability to break the genjutsu, or test our willpower, or perhaps our capability to react in an unexpected situation. Either way, this is just a genjutsu. I should just look downwards and try to move along. If others break the genjutsu, I'll do so too. With those thoughts, he took his first step. Apart from him, only the 2 students from the Kurama clan were moving. Soon a few others took their first step. The girl from the Uchiha clan resisted the genjutsu, and after 15 seconds, was able to break through it. She then ran the obstacle race with absolute ease. Fujin sensed someone moving along at a very rapid speed and observed the girl. He was incredibly surprised. Sharingan? At this young age. He continued his race. After the first few steps, he tried jogging along the race. The other students too slowly managed to get a hang of the conditions and increased their speed. Fujin ranked 4th in the test. In all, only 41 students passed. Of the remaining 23, a few fell unconscious, and many didn't dare to take even a single step. Kisho dismissed them and asked them to leave. Immediately after the test, the ninjutsu test was started. Kisho's thoughts were, the previous genjutsu would have shaken these kids. So they won't be at their full potential while performing the ninjutsu. Which is how it should be, as they won't get normal conditions to perform ninjutsu in a real fight. 6 academy teachers observed 1 student each. To improve the effect of the previous test, Kisho arranged the tests in such a manner that the ones who completed the previous test last, had to attempt the ninjutsu exam first. The requirement to pass the ninjutsu exam was pretty lax. Just the 3 basic ninjutsu and any one other ninjutsu. Though the kids in the start struggled a bit, they didn't have any issue in completing the minimum requirements. What surprised Fujin though, is that 16 students displayed fire release, 1 jutsu, and another 7 displayed fire release, 2 jutsu. Fujin's thoughts were, land of fire indeed. Most probably all of them have fire affinity. Also seeing how everyone has practiced it, I guess most of Konoha's jounins with fire affinity can use the most advanced form of this jutsu. Considering that, I guess all the other villages should have their own counters for this jutsu. But since they are still asking the kids to focus on this jutsu, I suppose it still is very useful. Apart from it, the majority of the kids displayed the jutsus their clan specialized in. When Fujin's turn came, he performed the 3 basic ninjutsu. Then performed wind clone jutsu and created 8 clones. He then showed his wind explosion jutsu and finally displayed great breakthrough jutsu. Of course he only displayed 1/4 of their power, used hand signs and performed them a bit slowly. While not too outstanding, he still outperformed his classmates. What surprised Fujin the most is the performance of the Uchiha girl. She announced that she'll first perform fire release, 3 jutsu. Fujin became very interested when she announced it as he wasn't aware of what this stage of the jutsu could do. Right after she announced it, 2 academy teachers stepped forwards and held a metallic string between their hands. Fujin was a bit puzzled, isn't this the same thing they did for fire release, 2 jutsu? Just that instead of 1 teacher, 2 stepped up. After making the hand signs, she raised both her arms and pointed her index and middle finger out. Heat rays were released from both her fingers from both hands and in a few seconds, they cut both the metallic strings. Fujin thought, that's it? It's the same as fire release, 2 jutsu. Just that in that, they could release the heat ray through only 1 hand. There's basically no increase in the power of the jutsu, just the quantity. Still very weak for a rank C jutsu. Strange. Does the jutsu suddenly get much stronger in the later stages? She continued her test by displaying Fireball Jutsu and Fire Dragon Jutsu. Her performance was very good. In Fujin's opinion, in terms of ninjutsu, her performance was only second to a student from the Heitake clan from the 5th year. After the exam was over, the teachers began tallying the score. Naruto passed this work to his subordinates. His job was over when he decided to pass these 41 students. Kisho then reported to Hiruzen, Lord Hokage, all these 41 kids have passed my exam. Overall there is 1 from the 3rd year, 9 from the 4th year and 31 from the 5th year. They should make splendid shinobi. Combined with the 94 that passed from the senior-most batch, this year's results have been very good for us. Hiruzen nodded and said some kind words to the Nara shinobi. After tallying the scores, they were displayed for all the students to see. Fujin was still ranked first in his class. He was followed by Hana and then Hoka, whose rank increased due to superior performance in the graduation exam. After that, all the 41 students were gathered before Hiruzen. Hiruzen smiled and began giving another speech on the will of fire. Only this time, he was much more passionate, spoke with more fervor and his speech was more intense than any of his earlier speeches. Even Fujin was a bit dumbfounded on how someone can brainwash little kids so openly, with such vigor and be extremely proud about it. However, as the speech ended, Fujin smirked internally thinking, will of fire, will of fire, will of fire. Let me now see how much will of fire you actually have. Ha 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 ha. After the speech, Hiruzen said, "Hey, take Rei, Suzuki Fujin, Uchiha Miko step forward." All the three kids stepped forward and stood in front of Hiruzen. He said, "All three of you have worked very hard and performed splendidly. Speak, what reward would you like for your performance?" As soon as he said that, Heitake Rei stepped forward. It was seen as rude by many, including Fujin and Miko. While Fujin didn't mind it, Miko did pout. However, Rei's next words made everyone understand why he stepped so hurriedly. He said, "Lord Hokage, my mother is very sick and the doctors we visited couldn't cure her. Could you please arrange a good medical ninja to treat her?" While everyone now understood why he was so restless, it did pop another question in their mind. Fujin's thoughts were, isn't he from the Heitake clan? Sure, Sakumo is long dead, but their condition shouldn't be that desperate, should it? Also, shouldn't they have enough money to arrange it anyways? Unless it requires someone like Tsunade to deal with it, then I can understand. But even then, I don't think Hiruzen can call Tsunade back anyways. Kakashi too was visibly confused. Only a few teachers and Hiruzen knew the truth. Hiruzen thought, sigh, the Heitake clan has really deteriorated after Sakumo's death. Sadly, Kakashi hasn't paid much attention to the clan. This kid suddenly began performing really well this year, and hence I had looked into his background. His father died in the Third Ninja War, and his mother was only a civilian who wasn't even from the Heitake clan. Therefore she hasn't been paid any attention by the clan. She fell sick half-year back, and became the motivation for this lad to work hard. Though I do want Kakashi to lead a squad of genins, this was my main purpose to bring him here today. For him to take reins of the Heitake clan and bring it back to prosperity. Hiruzen nodded and said, "I'll arrange the best medics to treat your mother." He then smiled and said, "Keep training hard. Ensure that the will of fire in you burns brighter than ever." Heitake excitedly said yes and promised to keep training hard. Kakashi observed the young kid and decided, I need to take a proper look at what's going on in the clan. Hiruzen secretly paid attention to Kakashi's reaction, and was very satisfied with it. He could see the Heitake clan making a comeback soon. Chapter 33, I really am a ninja. After having Hokage's word to treat his mother, Rei stepped back. Miko then stepped forward and said, "Lord Hokage, I don't want any reward." This surprised everyone. Even Hiruzen was surprised, but he hid it and calmly analyzed, is this a way the Uchiha are retaliating for their constant monitoring? He then tried to convince her a couple of times. But she declined to get any reward. Hiruzen sighed and looked over at Fujin and thought, the Uchiha matter makes me feel my age. Well, at least he should have a reasonable request. This day should end properly. Fujin on the other hand was dumbfounded by both his fellow toppers. He thought, what the fuck? One begs for his mother's life, and the other refuses to accept any reward? Why do they want to make my life harder? He then calmed himself and muttered to himself, sigh whatever. It doesn't matter. The Dao of shamelessness must live on. He steeled himself and stepped forward. He put up a smile and an excited expression while thinking, this is it. For this moment I carried 2 swords in person for 5 whole months. He then said, Lord Hokage. For my reward, I want 2 swords made entirely of chakra metal. He then looked at the Hokage with excited and hopeful expression while hoping that somehow his eyes sparkled like in anime. Majority of the students weren't aware of chakra metal. However, almost every teacher knew it. And they were absolutely shocked by the request. Genki, who was standing close by, had his jaw dropped after hearing what Fujin said. If Fujin had seen him, he would be sure that he could fit an egg in Genki's mouth. Kakashi's eyebrows twitched at request. He thought, talk about extravagant. Even my father's blade wasn't entirely made of chakra metal. The one who was shocked the most, however, was Hiruzen. Despite wearing the Hokage's hat and having excellent control over his emotions, Fujin could still see his shock. Of course he totally ignored it. He thought, whether Hiruzen is happy, or so shocked that he dies of a heart attack is none of my business. Wait. If he dies right now, then it'd be very bad. But, yeah, I don't think just this much shock would be enough to kill this old freak. He did live through 3 brutal wars without even taking a single major injury. Hiruzen's mind went totally blank for a second. He then thought, made entirely of chakra metal? Even the ones they sell in Konoha only have around 15% chakra metal. Rest is made of other common materials. The last time someone made a sword entirely of chakra metal was when Sensei commissioned to cast that sword. And it cost well over 100 million ryo to make that sword. Of course, this kid is probably not aware of that fact, and I could fool him, but that's still worth tens of millions of ryo. He then looked at Genki to see if he knew what's going on, however he was clearly shocked too. In fact, he didn't even notice the Hokage looking at him. Hiruzen thought, now what to do? I can't directly say no. That would be too demotivating. Also, it won't look good for me to deny him. If I do, I'm 100% sure that Danzo will spread rumors saying that the Hokage lies to academy students. Hiruzen thought hard for another few seconds and came up with a reasonable excuse. Seeing that Hiruzen was ready to talk, Kakashi noticed and chuckled internally. It took Lord Hokage 13 seconds to answer. That kid sure is something. Hiruzen finally sighed and said, sadly I can't give you what you want because no one makes swords made entirely of chakra metal. Fujin wasn't aware of the fact that chakra blades weren't entirely made of chakra metal and thought that Hiruzen is just making an excuse. He showed a dejected expression and said, a couple of tanto made of chakra metal then. Kakashi's eyebrows twitched again at Fujin's new request. He did struggle to keep his laughter in after seeing Hiruzen's expression. Genki, on the other hand, was even more shocked. Hiruzen replied again, sadly, even they aren't made entirely of chakra metal. Fujin was almost pissed at hearing that reply. But he calmed himself and thought about what Hiruzen had said. A few words stuck in his mind, aren't made entirely of chakra metal. It then clicked him, wait, in my previous world, didn't such production involve a lot of alloys, or other materials? Even gold jewelry wasn't 100% gold. Is that what he is referring to? He then asked, Lord Hokage, what do you mean by aren't made entirely of chakra metal? Do they only put a little bit of chakra metal and then something else in the sword? Hiruzen nodded nervously, not liking where the conversation was headed to. Fujin then excitedly began saying, Lord Hokage, then. However, he was cut by Hiruzen. He asked, Fujin, Can you tell me why exactly do you want a sword made of chakra metal? While asking this question, he was desperately thinking, I need to change topic fast. Can't let him continue talking about this. Fujin, upset at being cut, said, I was told that they assist in chakra flow. I like using swords, and want to be better at it by using chakra flow. Hiruzen narrowed his eyes and asked, how do you know about chakra flow? Fujin did get a hint that Hiruzen was aiming to change the topic, however he wasn't much concerned. He could always innocently get back to the topic. Hiruzen might be 100 times better at negotiating, however being a 10-year-old kid had a lot of advantages. He answered without any hesitation, Michi-sensei. Hiruzen then looked over begrudgingly at Michi who was at the sides. He thought, that's it, I'm assigning him a weak genin squad and will make him do nothing apart from D-rank missions for half a year. We have pretty much recovered from our losses, so loss of one Chuyunin won't be felt. He then explained very kindly to Fujin, you don't need swords made of chakra metal to use chakra flow. You can use them on normal swords too, however they break if you do. Fujin thought, yeah, I know. Get to the point. Hiruzen continued, there are actually special swords that are made to aid chakra flow. In the land of iron, many samurai use those swords. As for chakra metal, it's a bit problematic and could get you in trouble. Fujin naturally knew that. Having swords worth tens of million ryo would put a target on his back. Which is why he was planning on leaving them with Hiruzen. He thought, that's a valid concern. Though I'm sure that it isn't the main reason for him to not give me chakra blades. But this new info does intrigue me. Why didn't any of the weapon shops have it? He left that question for later and asked, is it possible to make those swords to assist wind chakra flow? For the first time today, Fujin asked a question genuinely. However it still put Hiruzen on edge. He thought, yeah, it can. They would have to use wind nature chakra metal for it though. And it'll still take the cost to millions. Hiruzen replied, yes it is, but it's better for you to not get it yet. How about this, when you are ready, I'll help you get in touch with the right people to make a sword like that. Fujin dejectedly thought, I am sure I could get in touch with them myself pretty soon. However he still nodded. Hiruzen was finally happy that he saved millions of ryo. He was going to talk but Fujin spoke again. He asked Lord Hokage, you said the sword that you'll give me is used by samurai. Right. Hiruzen nodded while really hoping that there were no more extravagant requests. Fujin continued, then could you have someone teach me samurai saber techniques? Please. Hiruzen thought about it. For one, he was happy that the request didn't involve tens of millions of ryo. Secondly, he had noticed Fujin's interest in swords. He thought, having a sword master sensor who specializes in wind release can be a very useful asset. Though we can't teach samurai saber techniques liberally, teaching it to a few kids is acceptable. He nodded and said, all right, I'll assign you a teacher for it. Fujin then politely thanked him and stepped backwards while secretly thinking, being an innocent little kid has a lot of advantages. Though I don't think I can ever beat Hiruzen again in negotiations. That old monkey has the experience of negotiating after 3 great ninja wars, and the ones he negotiated with were 100 times more unreasonable than me. Looking at Fujin stepping back, Hiruzen released a sigh of relief. He then congratulated everyone and left quickly. While leaving, he decided that this would be the last year he'd give out rewards to the topper. After Hiruzen left, many teachers awkwardly stared at Fujin. However, he just ignored them and pretended to not notice any of their stares. After Hiruzen left, all the respective class teachers handed the headbands to their students and praised them for graduating early. They were asked to visit the academy after 3 days. On getting the headband, Fujin put it on. His first words after that moment were, "Wow, I really am a ninja now." Chapter 34, Analysis and Planning. Fujin sat down in a meditative posture in his living room. He cleared his mind and began planning. He thought, the academy is finally over. Though I had to graduate 2 years early, it ain't much of an issue. The only major event that will happen anytime soon is the Uchiha massacre. But right now I am not really strong enough to even think about interfering in it. While I do have 2 years, at best, I'll only be a Chuunin officially by then. He thought for a bit more and decided, alright, I'll ignore the event. It shouldn't affect me in any way. Secondly, my strength. Right now, though experience is lacking, it won't be wrong to say that despite not having many rank C jutsus in my arsenal, my ninjutsu is probably barely at Chuunin level. The 3 months of daily sparring helped me iron out many issues in my ninjutsu. My chakra reserves have increased rapidly too. I can now make 3 shadow clones that satisfy the requirements mentioned in the scroll. Which means that my chakra level is well into the Chuunin level. As for Taijutsu, it's a bit confusing. I'm confident that I'm stronger than most who took part in the Chuunin exam in Naruto. But I still lost to that Hyuga. If I assume that he and Hoka are already at Chuunin level in terms of Taijutsu, then it'll mean that I am probably at that level too. Worst case, I'm probably at the peak of Genin rank in terms of Taijutsu. I really need a better Taijutsu style. Only good thing is that my physique is very good for my age. My Kenjutsu should be sorted when I learn samurai saber techniques. So it'll be a lot more lethal than my Taijutsu, but Kenjutsu has its own weaknesses. Holding 2 swords would mean that I can't make any hand signs. And techniques like Raise Non and Wind Explosion that need hands can't be used. But I guess getting a mid-range slash might compensate for it to some degree. Anyways, I should think about it more after I learn samurai saber techniques. My capabilities as a sensor have grown too. My chakra field can now extend over 750 meters and I can do pretty much everything expected from a sensor, though I will need a few years to master all those tricks. My current fighting ability is majorly based around 10 ninjutsu, body flicker, wind propelling, earth military movement, shadow clone, wind clone, great breakthrough, wind explosion, gale surge, rock shield and projectile control jutsus. Apart from that, it is heavily dependent on swords, kunaus, and shurikens enhanced with chakra flow. I also know Raise Non, but I haven't trained to use it in combat yet. Though I do have good ideas of using it, for the time being, I can't risk anyone knowing that I know it. So overall, if I am willing to use everything I have to its fullest potential, then I think I'll be at Chuunin level, though just barely. I'll probably be able to beat the likes of Iruka and Mizuki, but against someone stronger like Genki or even Michi, my only option would be to run away. Speaking of escaping, with my wind and shadow clones, along with body flicker jutsu and earth military movement jutsu and my ability to hide my chakra, escaping from an elite Chuunin might actually be possible. Unless it is someone specialized in tracking, it shouldn't be an issue. In fact, if anyone asked me what my best skill right now is, my answer would definitely be the art of escaping. As for what to do next, I need to go through Section C of the library. I have to learn the Rank C Wind Release Jutsus. If any Rank C Earth Release Jutsu is handy, then I need to learn it too. Apart from that, I will need to learn one Rank C Genjutsu and complete the current Fuinjutsu scroll and move on to the next one. He concluded, that much should be enough. After that I could work on improving the jutsus I know. There's still medical ninjutsu that I'd like to learn, but sigh, I have my plate full. I'll check it sometime later. Satisfied with his immediate plans, he decided to start making long-term plans. He thought, now that I have spent almost half a decade here, I have a much better idea about this world. At the rate my physique and chakra has been growing, I'm positive that I'll reach Jounin level. And if the Section A of the library has good jutsus, then becoming an elite Jounin shouldn't be an issue too. But, how do I step beyond elite Jounin and be as strong as Cages? He thought long and hard about this. After half an hour, he concluded, probably the easiest way I have is to learn Sage Mode. The second way is learning the 8 inner gates. However, I'll have to create a very good relationship with Guy for him to teach me that. Not to mention, I'm not sure if merely hard work will be enough to learn it. The third way would be to somehow get the Impure World Resurrection Jutsu and create my own army of Rank A and Rank S dead ninjas. The fourth way would be to get and master Flying Thunder God Jutsu. The fifth way would be to invent my own Rank A and higher jutsus. Combined with high speed, enhanced strength, and swordplay, it might be enough to reach that level. Another option could be to become a Jinchuriki. However, that will put Akatsuki on my ass, not something I think I want. Though if I'm strong enough, I could still take that risk. Getting a few strong summons would help too. After concluding, he sighed thinking, even the easiest way is crazy difficult to achieve. I really wonder if I'd be able to reach that level. However, just then, Fujin was struck with a crazy idea. He thought, that's right. I can explore that option. However, can that really be done? He analyzed for a few minutes and thought, I can't say for sure. But, if I am able to pull it off, I will get the means to become incredibly strong. Not to mention, I know exactly when I'll have the right opportunity to get the resources needed for it. He thought a bit more to analyze everything he could and decided, all right, I should definitely work towards achieving that. If it works, then entering cage level won't be an issue. Even if it doesn't, the work done for it won't exactly be a waste. The idea lifted his spirits. With not much time left in the day, he decided to have his dinner and meditate before going to bed. Chapter 35, Genin Squad. The next couple of days were very hectic for Hiruzen. Grouping the fresh Genins and assigning them their sensei involved a lot of paperwork and analysis. A lot of discussion had to be done with the academy teachers as well as with the decided sensei. He first started by forming teams of 3. He thought, in all 135 students became Genin this year. Over 200 from 6th year failed and they will be added to the Genin reserve forces. As for the ones that passed this year, the 94 from the 6th year don't have much hope. We had already graduated the talented people from their year earlier. Even if just a quarter of them became Chuyunin, then that will be enough. So I will just assign Chuyunins to guide them. As for the 41 who graduated early, all have good potential. They all should at least become Chuyunin, and around half have the potential to become a special Jounin. So I'll have to arrange 14 Jounin sensei for them. Even though Konoha's numbers have almost recovered, we are still weaker than before the Third Great Ninja War when it comes to high-end power. So we need to train all 41 of them with the intention of raising them to Jounin rank. Even if not everyone becomes a special Jounins, becoming an elite Chuyunin will be sufficient. As for becoming Jounin, it's hard to say. I'm confident that Uchiha Miko will become a Jounin, just like Senju Teru from the previous year. Just like him, she has the potential to become an elite Jounin. But I can't comment on the others. Sigh, I hope that we get at least 10 to 12 Jounin from this batch. The Kyuubi attack killed a lot of our Jounins. He then called the academy teachers to begin forming the teams and got busy with the required paperwork. After the academy teachers prepared a rough draft, however there were a few disagreements like every year. They approached the Hokage to discuss it. Hiruzen said, "So which are the top teams you formed?" Genki replied immediately, "According to their performance, Heitake Rei, Uchiha Miko, Suzuki Fujin, Hyaga Hoka, and Hyaga Hana show the highest potential. However, Rei's performance was high due to his conditions back home. Now that his mother has been treated, we can't be sure if he'll train with the same gusto. And the two Hyaga can't be on the same team. So I propose forming a team of Uchiha Miko, Suzuki Fujin, and Hyaga Hoka." However, soon another teacher, who was the class teacher to Heitake Rei spoke, "I disagree. In a mere half year, Rei has made huge progress. In fact, his talent can be considered even above Miko. He should be placed within the top squad. I suggest making a squad consisting of Miko, Rei, and Fujin." Another teacher commented, "Actually, Fujin is just a civilian orphan. His future won't be as smooth as the children from shinobi clans. Even his great breakthrough jutsu was provided to him by Genki. So I think that a squad of Rei, Miko, and Hoka might be more optimal." Genki rebutted him, "I disagree. Even though Fujin is just a civilian with no background, his performance has been the most consistent in my class. He deserves to be on that squad. Not to mention, he is also a sensor and has wind affinity. Being a sensor, he'll complement the Byakugan. And his wind release jutsus would assist Miko's fire release jutsus and make them more lethal. Also, both him and Hoka kind of have a rivalry in taijutsu. So their teamwork would be much better." He secretly thought, not to mention that they are so aloof that they barely had any other friendships. So I have no idea whether they can cooperate with others. The previous teacher was about to rebuke him again, but... However, he was cut by Hiruzen. "All right, that's enough. I have decided. The squad will be made of Miko, Fujin, and Hoka." Rei's class teacher was visibly upset over this. He was about to speak, when Hiruzen said, "Their Jounin sensei will be Senju Renjiro." The teachers were confused by this revelation. One asked, "But Lord Hokage, we hadn't selected him to be a sensei, had we?" Hiruzen shook his head and said, "No. This change was due to Fujin requesting guidance on samurai saber techniques. Renjiro had trained under a samurai. Also he is an expert in fighting against Cherry-non and uses water and earth jutsus. So it'll provide Miko an opportunity to understand how she can be countered and would help her develop more. And Hoka could learn water release jutsus from him. And his taijutsu is strong enough to handle Hoka's obsession with it." He then looked at Rei's class teacher and said, "Sadly Heitake Rei doesn't practice his clan's kenjutsu. Or else I'd have put him on the squad instead of Hoka." Everyone was satisfied with this explanation. They moved on to the remaining students. It took over 13 hours for them to form all the squads and decide their sensei. Once that was done, Hiruzen sent an umbu to deliver the news to all the ones selected to be a sensei. If they had any issues, they could approach him the next day. The next day, many approached Hiruzen to meet him. At noon, Renjiro visited him. On entering, he greeted Hiruzen and said, "Old man, I didn't agree to become a sensei to snorty little brats. Besides, I have already raised one genin squad." Renjiro was a bit close to him while growing up, which is why Hiruzen didn't mind his words. Hiruzen looked at Renjiro. He was dressed casually and hence Hiruzen could see all the scars on his face and arms that he had gotten over his career. Hiruzen sighed and said, "You've been doing missions almost non-stop since the end of the war. This assignment is for a couple of reasons. 1. For you to get some rest. And secondly, as one of those genins wants to learn the samurai saber techniques." Renjiro looked skeptically at Hiruzen and asked, "You do know that I can't teach it lightly to anyone. So, is there any reason for me to teach it to him?" Hiruzen sighed and said, "He ranked first in his class. And asked for this as his reward." Renjiro asked, What reward?" Hiruzen replied, "It's an initiative I took to encourage the students and get them to train harder." Hearing that, Renjiro nodded. He knew the shortage of ninjas that Konoha faced. He sighed and said, "Couldn't you get him to ask for anything else?" Hiruzen didn't reply, but his sweat dropped thinking about what the something else was that Fujin had asked for. After discussing a bit more and getting to know a bit more about the students, Renjiro left. He wasn't surprised by the fact that his squad was the one with highest potential. After all, he has been an elite jounin for over a decade. Later that day, Fujin went to buy new clothes at a shop that sold clothes to ninjas. He bought a completely black attire. He noticed that the cloth used for these clothes was a lot sturdier. The shopkeeper said that it is harder to cut, has some resistances to fire and lightning, and is harder to get wet or dusty. He put one on and checked himself in the mirror. His whole attire, i.e., boots, trousers, and shirt were completely black. It suited his fair skin tone, black eyes, and black spiky hair well. He thought, "I guess I should get a black mask sometime, maybe then I could play hiding in shadow, haha." He looked at himself again. He wasn't bulky, but his muscles were properly toned. There was barely any trace of any fat on his body. He was around 4 feet, 9 inches tall. He thought, "Alright, it fits properly, and also looks good." He bought 3 sets of the attire. He also bought a pair of gloves with metal plates on the backhand. He also inscribed a hard seal in the interior of the glove. While it didn't do much, Fujin felt that there was no harm in even slightly increasing its defenses. He did wish that he could take the metal plates out, inscribe them with hard seal instead of the whole glove and then put it back. But he knew that he wouldn't be able to put the metal plate back in properly. Next day, at 7:30 a.m., the graduated students reported to the academy. The classroom used wasn't the regular classroom that Fujin went to. 42 students were present here. The teachers took attendance, and then gave a scroll to each of the students. Genki called his students one by one and gave it to them. The class teachers of other students did the same. When Fujin's turn came, he noticed that Genki was incredibly happy. He wasn't sure why, but since he didn't particularly care, he went back. Genki was happy because Hiruzen had allowed him to take the Jounin exam. After distributing it to everyone, a teacher announced, "The storage scroll provided to you has a first aid kit, 24 shurikens, 6 kunaus, 12 senbon needles, 1 ninja rope and 100 meters long ninja wire." He then smiled and said, "This is the final gift from the academy to you. Congratulations on graduating. We will now announce your genin squads. When Fujin's squad was announced, he sighed and thought, an aloof guy who doesn't care about anything apart from taijutsu. And a stuck-up brat who probably thinks herself to be as talented as Madara. Fuck our teamwork. Sigh, makes me wonder if I should have graduated last year. Teru was the only one matured enough. He analyzed a bit more, anyways, it ain't exactly bad. Taijutsu spars with Hoka have always been very helpful. And Miko should give me a bit of practice against the Sharingan. Granted that she ain't nowhere near Obito or Madara, but neither am I. He then looked at Miko and thought, also, since she'll die after around 2 more years, it'll mean that I won't be restricted in this squad for very long. Now then, I wonder who my Jounin sensei will be. I really hope that it ain't Kakashi. Also, what of my rewards? Genki didn't talk about it, and Hiruzen didn't call me to meet him. After the genin squads were announced, the teacher said that the Jounin sensei would come and pick them up from the class, and then they all left. While they were leaving, Fujin had a thought and sighed, Naruto and his gang should start the academy next year. And I won't be here. What's with me meeting so few canon characters? Soon Jounin started entering the class and called out for their teams. A couple of minutes after the academy teachers left, a tall muscular guy entered and announced, Team 3, come with me. Fujin, Hoka, and Miko followed him. Renjiro moved to the terrace of the academy. A few seconds later, all 3 genins arrived. When he reached there, Fujin observed his new sensei. He was around 6 feet 6 inches tall, very muscular, looked middle-aged, and had 3 scars on his face, one going right across his right eye, but his eye was fine. His hair was black and very long, a bit similar to Madara's. He held 2 swords on his waist. From the symbol on his clothes, Fujin understood that he was from the Senju clan. Actually, there was another thing that allowed Fujin to know that he was from the Senju clan. He had massive amounts of chakra. For obvious reasons, Fujin never tried to sense Hiruzen's chakra, so this was the highest chakra level he had measured so far. It was around 7 times that of Genki. When Fujin tried to measure his chakra, Renjiro noticed. He looked at Fujin and stared at him. Fujin merely smiled. Renjiro thought, so this is the kid who wants to learn the samurai saber techniques and the kid who asked for swords made of chakra metal. Not bad, he seems to be a good enough sensor. And even after I stared at him, he merely smiled back. I wonder if that makes him foolish, brave, or just shameless. He then looked at his remaining 2 genins and thought. The Hyuga has the same stoic face as their whole clan, and just looking at the Uchiha's face showed how much pride she has in her. He sighed thinking, this is gonna take a while. Chapter 36, Senju Renjiro. Renjiro said, I am Senju Renjiro. I'll be your Jounin sensei. Let's start by getting to know each other. So just tell me something about yourself. Miko asked, what should we tell? On the other hand, Fujin remembered the tell me about yourself question that used to be asked in interviews in his previous life. Renjiro replied, tell me about your likes, dislikes, dreams, hobbies and similar stuff. Fujin then replied, I am Suzuki Fujin. I like swords and cool jutsus. My hobby is to train and read shinobi history and wars. I dislike the carnage that wars cause. And my dream is to become a strong ninja in the future so that I could bring peace to the world. Renjiro stared at Fujin and was very impressed with his dream. Of course, if he knew Fujin's real thoughts, he might have vomited blood. After looking at an impressed Renjiro, Fujin thought, yup, that's exactly what Konoha higher UPS would like to hear. I couldn't care less about world peace, but saying that is what will get me in the good books of these guys and could provide me with the opportunity to learn Flying Thunder God Jutsu. And also make heroes and protect me in case Danzo tries to recruit me. Either way, it's not like I can do anything about world peace right now. So why not just say it, hee hee. Renjiro then looked at Miko. She said, I am Uchiha Miko. I like cats. I dislike anyone treating me like a small child. My hobby is practicing ninjutsu and playing with cats. And my dream is to be the strongest Uchiha ever. Fujin looked at her and chuckled internally thinking, well, you've got 2 years to surpass Madara. Rip. Renjiro nodded and looked towards Hoka. He said, I am Hyuga Hoka. I like taijutsu. I dislike studying. My hobby is to spar with others and my dream is to be the strongest taijutsu user. Renjiro nodded and said, well, congratulations on graduating early. But that doesn't mean that you are Konoha Shinobi. You guys will be on probation for 3 months. And after that I'll decide whether you're ready to be a ninja or not. This announcement had mixed reactions from the 3 genins. Fujin wondered, no test. After thinking for a bit, he realized they are probably still recovering. That's why there's a probation period instead of a test to check whether we are ready or not. However, the other 2 kids didn't take the announcement lightly. Miko impatiently asked, but why? Didn't we pass the graduation exam? Hoka took her point further and said, yeah, I even defeated everyone in the taijutsu tournament. Renjiro replied, graduation exam is the bare minimum you require to be a ninja. Your attitude, temperament, courage, and values matter more. And I'll be the one to judge that. Miko and Hoka were still unsatisfied and wanted to complain more, but Renjiro didn't give them a chance and announced, we'll meet tomorrow in Training Ground 17 at 6 a.m. I'll check your skills tomorrow. Be on time, I hate tardiness. After saying that, he flickered away. When he left, Fujin thought, he didn't say a single thing about himself other than his name. Heck, I think even Kakashi talked more with his team. After he left, Miko huffed and started to leave without saying anything. Hoka, on the other hand, said goodbye to Fujin and was planning to leave too. Fujin sighed and said, oi, wait a minute. This got both their attention. Hoka looked at him without saying anything, whereas Miko annoyingly asked, what? Fujin replied, tomorrow we'll most probably have to fight against Sensei as a team. So we need to understand each other's strengths and weaknesses. And we also need to plan how to fight together. Hoka agreed with that and nodded. However, Miko replied smugly, you two don't need to worry about it. I'll beat him by myself tomorrow. Fujin gave her a deadpan look, which irritated her and she asked, what? You don't think that I can beat him? Fujin resisted his urge to facepalm and replied, do tell how you plan on defeating a Jounin by yourself. She smirked and replied, I'll catch him off guard and use Fire Dragon Jutsu on him. Fujin said, he is from the Senju clan, who specializes in earth and water release jutsus. Assuming that you somehow catch him off guard, he'll still be able to defend. This reply caught her by surprise. She thought a bit and then smirked again and replied, I know Shari-non Genjutsu. As soon as he looks in my eyes, I'll put him under a Genjutsu. Fujin mentally scoffed, as if he will fall for something so basic. But I'm tired of dealing with her. He said, all right, we'll call that Plan A and we will start with it. Now let's discuss Plan B. Miko replied, why do we need a Plan B? Fujin replied, well, he knows that you have the Sharingan. So what if he never looks into your eyes because he knows that your eyes are so awesome? It'll be stupid if we just stand there doing nothing, right? Worse, he may think that you are just a little kid. This finally got her attention. Seeing that, Fujin was relieved and thought, finally. So I have to either praise her or say someone will think that she's a little brat, or both, to get her on board. She then asked, so what should we do if plan A fails? Fujin replied, first, let's talk about what each one of us can do. I'll start. I'm a sensor and can sense in a 500 meters radius around me. I'm good at taijutsu and with swords. And I know wind release jutsus, the ones you saw in the exam. I can also perform shadow clone and body flicker jutsu. What about you guys? Miko then replied, I am good at taijutsu too and can use the Uchiha taijutsu style. My Sharingan allows me to see chakra and use genjutsu. I am very good with shurikens. Other than the basic jutsus, I can perform a few fire release jutsus. You saw them in the exam. And I can do body flicker too. In fact, I was taught it by the very best. Fujin was surprised at that information and thought, did Shisui teach her this jutsu? Hoka then replied, I am a master at the gentle fist style. I can close enemies' chakra points and my eyes can see up to 800 meters away. Apart from it, I know fish spit jutsu and rock shield jutsu. Fujin nodded, and advised, if you can, then learn body flicker jutsu. If all three of us can use it, then it'll be very helpful and we could use a lot of tactics. Hoka groaned a bit and said, but I don't want to learn more ninjutsu. Fujin replied, well, it's just a movement jutsu. You can move at incredibly fast speed. It'll help make your taijutsu way more lethal. Just imagine your normal jab, then imagine you appearing out of nowhere and performing that jab on the enemy. As Fujin expected, that got Hoka interested and he agreed to learn it. Fujin then talked a bit about tactics that they could use. He said, we need to decide who'll fight sensei up close and who'll perform support attacks from a distance. However, Hoka cut him off and said, I want to fight up close. Fujin was about to nod when Miko said, no, I want to fight up close. Hoka rebuked her and then they started arguing. Fujin sighed thinking, kids. He then stopped them both and said, among all of us, Hoka was ranked 1 in the taijutsu tournament. So he'll engage in hand-to-hand combat with sensei. Miko was about to talk, but Fujin continued, but he can't handle sensei all by himself. So you and I will assist him from time to time. Also, both of us have mid-range jutsus, so it'll be a waste if we can't use them. Hoka, wanting to engage in hand-to-hand combat, quickly supported Fujin and Miko had to begrudgingly agree. Fujin thought, I planned on discussing a lot more, like the fire-wind combination. And even wanted to ask Hoka to learn more advanced water release jutsus as they work well with wind release as well. Sadly, I was too impatient. It'll take a lot of time before they are ready to listen to those tactics. Kinda makes me wish that Renjiro beats both of them up tomorrow to make them a little less stuck up. But I'm afraid that if he does that, then he'll beat me up too. And without using earth military movement jutsu and wind propelling jutsu, it'll be hard to dodge for long. Sigh, I wonder when I can use these jutsus publicly. It's very uncomfortable to fake hand signs, limit their power and not use half of the jutsus I know. Sadly, it's necessary. I hope I reach the Jounin level soon, as after that, there won't be much worries about Danzo trying to recruit me. It'll be too late to attempt to brainwash me at that stage. Fujin had also planned to ask them to grab a bite together at Ichiraku. However, he had enough for today. Soon they said goodbyes and left. Fujin went over to the library. Now that he had become a genin, he was allowed to access the section C of the library. However, that's not what he was here for. Becoming a ninja allowed him to see a certain book. He went to the librarian and showed his card and asked, "Can I see the bingo book?" She was surprised by a 10-year-old kid asking her that question. However, since he was a ninja, she nodded and asked, "Would you like to see the smaller one or the bigger one?" Now it was Fujin's turn to be surprised. He asked, "What's the difference?" She replied, "Well, the smaller one only has names, bounty, affiliation, and some basic information. Whereas the bigger one has more in-depth information." Hearing that, Fujin asked her to show the bigger one. She nodded and brought it to Fujin. When Fujin saw the book, he was shocked. His first thought was, "It's freaking huge." He opened to see it. Apparently, every page covered the data of only one ninja. And the book had 2,197 pages. After analyzing, Fujin thought, well, it makes sense, considering that there are over 100k ninjas in this world. He then mentally thanked the ones who made such a good index. Everything was arranged properly according to the village and alphabetically as per their names. There were also lists that arranged the ninjas as per their rank in their village and in the descending order of their bounties. After searching for a couple of minutes, he found the name he was looking for, Senjurenjiro. He began turning the page, but while doing that, a thought occurred to him. It's funny that I thought my biggest advantage in this world would be information. But considering how vast this world is, I don't think I have the information on even 1% of the ninjas. Heck, apart from Tsunade, I didn't even know any living Senju. Anyways, this data is very detailed. I am surprised that we can read it for free, but it makes sense, I suppose. This data is compiled by the ones who make the bingo book, and since it's already out in the open, why not just let all your ninjas read it for free? He opened the page and began reading, and he was very surprised by what he read. His bounty was 45 million ryo. It was even higher than Asuma's during Shippuden and was put on him by Kirigakure. He thought, not bad at all. I guess Hiruzen did appoint someone very competent as my sensei. He read further. The information that Fujin obtained was, Senjurenjiro, rank A, 39 years old. He became Genin at 8, Shuyunin at 10, Jounin at 16 and Elite Jounin at 28. He specializes in water and earth release ninjutsu, but can use jutsu of other elements too. He's an excellent swordsman who was trained in the way of swords by a samurai. He fought in both the Second and Third Great Ninja Wars. In the Third War, he had served as Orochimaru's deputy on the Kiri front. Later on, when Orochimaru had to join a different battlefield, he became Konoha's commander on the Kiri front. Due to his skill with the sword, his proficiency in water release jutsus and his summon, a sloth, he was very effective against Kiri ninjas. He killed 13 Kiri Jounins and over 50 Kiri Chuyunins over the course of the war. His biggest accomplishment was killing one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist in that war. Though his army was defeated by a surprise offensive launched by Kiri, he managed to retreat with the majority of his army and kept Kiri at bay until Konoha's yellow flash reinforced him and pushed Kiri back to the seas. After reading that, Fujin thought, damn fuck. He's strong. Not Sunin level, but very close. Anyways, it says that he was trained by a samurai, so I guess he's guide Hiruzen arranged for me. I do wonder what that summon is though. It's the first time I'm hearing of a sloth. Ain't that a deadly sin? But that sounds a bit too overpowered and not something from this world. Well, whatever, I'll look into it later. He then looked into the data of the ninja he knew from Naruto. He sighed in relief, confirming that it was very similar to what he knew. He also got a better understanding of the shinobi world. He thought, Konoha is way stronger than what was shown in Naruto. Fathers of Shikaku, Inoichi, and Shibi are still alive and leading their clans. Each of them is an elite jounin and are very close to rank S. Though I guess that their strengths will decrease over time due to their age. In all, Konoha has just 3 rank S ninjas now. But Jiraiya is barely in the village, and Tsunade can barely even fight. However, surprisingly, or unsurprisingly, the bingo book has no mention of Danzo. Also, it's quite possible that Fugaku is hiding his Mangekyou. Same with Shisui. I'm not sure how many gates Guy can open, but he might be able to forcibly rise to compete with rank S ninja if needed. Also, it's quite surprising to see Koharu and Homura are rank A ninjas. I don't recall them ever fighting in Naruto. In all there are 22 elite jounins from Konoha mentioned in the bingo book. And it's quite possible that there are a few more who haven't been mentioned here, like Danzo and others from Root. There are also a few more rank A ninjas who haven't yet become an elite jounin like Kakashi and Guy. He then sighed, I didn't think there would be so many elite jounins in Konoha. And despite this Hiruzen chose to sacrifice Hisashi. Makes me wonder how bad Konoha's losses were in the lower ranks due to the war. As for the other villages, Kumo and Iwa are pretty strong too, though not as strong as Konoha at least when it comes to cage level and elite jounin level combat strength. Kiri is actually quite impressive too, or would have been if so many of their top-ranked ninjas weren't labeled as Rouge ninjas. I guess Obito has pretty much wrecked Kiri. Suna, on the other hand, is doing really bad. Their cage is easily the weakest out of all 5 cages. Though they have 2 more rank S ninjas, both are retired and very old. And their number of rank A ninjas is pitifully low. He closed the book and thought, well, that should be enough information for now. I'll get more as and when there's a need to. He handed the bingo book back to the librarian and went back home. Chapter 37, Sparring with Sensei. Next day, at 6 a.m., all the members of Team 3 gathered in the training ground 17. It was a small open area in the center of a mini forest. Renjiro was the last one to arrive. On seeing his genin squad already there, he wished them good morning and said, as I said yesterday, before I begin training you 3, I'll like to see what you can do. So we'll have a spar, you 3 versus me. He paused for a few seconds and said, we begin now. As soon as he said that, he jumped forward with the intention to punch. It caught all the 3 genins off guard. Miko jumped backwards hurriedly and Hoka jumped to his left. Fujin, on the other hand, just flickered away. Renjiro's punch landed on the ground where the 3 genins were standing initially, and the ground cracked, causing a lot of dust to rise, which hit him. Renjiro thought, not bad. I only intended to punch the ground in front of them, but I didn't think that all 3 would react so quickly. Especially Fujin, did he use body flicker jutsu without any hand signs? As soon as he used body flicker, Fujin thought, damn. He attacked so suddenly that I flickered away by reflex. He then saw the dust rising up and covering Renjiro and so did Hoka and Miko. Fujin immediately started sensing him, Miko activated her Sharingan and Hoka activated his Byakugan. On sensing Renjiro, Fujin thought, well now that I've shown it, I can't hide it anymore. So might as well spam it. Still I didn't think hiding my power would be so difficult. I really need to be more careful, in case he pulls a few more stunts like that. I hope I can protect the rest of my secrets for at least another year or two. While Fujin was thinking that, both Hoka and Miko ran towards Renjiro to engage him in combat. Renjiro just stood there, waiting for them to begin their assault. Hoka was the first one to reach him, however, Miko launched a few shurikens on Renjiro. Renjiro dodged them and then engaged Hoka in hand-to-hand combat. He was able to counter his gentle fist style very easily. When Miko joined in, he suppressed both of them with ease. However, he soon frowned. He tried to sense, but he couldn't sense Fujin at all. Taking the opportunity provided by his teammates, Fujin had disappeared from his sight and hid his chakra. Though Renjiro couldn't sense Fujin, Fujin closely monitored their fight, waiting for an opportunity to butt in. He soon found one when Renjiro punched Hoka. Fujin threw a shuriken with all his power. However, Renjiro smirked and thought, a fake opening. Always works against brats. He moved a step back to avoid the shuriken, however, the shuriken curved towards him. That surprised Renjiro. He was about to dodge again, when he felt no, something is weird. So instead of dodging, he just caught the shuriken right out of its trajectory. However, as soon as he caught it, he sensed two small chakra signatures behind him. He turned to see two wind spheres heading at him. He took a step to dodge, however, at the same time Miko launched fireball jutsu in the direction he was planning to dodge. Seeing that, he adjusted his direction and dodged both the jutsus and created distance from his students. Seeing that, Hoka rushed forward to engage him in close combat. While Hoka was rushing towards him, Renjiro thought, not bad at all. This doesn't seem planned, and their teamwork still needs a lot of work, but they are able to take advantage of the opportunities created by each other. Not to mention that I felt wind on that shuriken, which means that Fujin used projectile control jutsu on the shuriken. And instead of pressing forward on a hopeless assault, he took the advantage of that fireball to disappear again. He engaged in another round of combat with Hoka and Miko. Fujin, who was secretly observing the combat, thought an elite jounin indeed. That opening was a bait, to understand my location. Not to mention, he grabbed the shuriken out of thin air. Though, I wonder what he'd have done if I had infused that shuriken with wind chakra. Anyways, I wonder if I can fool him using a shadow clone. Fujin kept hiding, and made a shadow clone. After a minute, it looked like both Hoka and Miko were about to lose. So the clone interrupted Renjiro by launching two wind explosion jutsu on him. He followed it up with shurikens. Renjiro dodged everything and moved towards Fujin to engage him in close combat. However, the clone flickered and moved behind Miko and Hoka. Seeing Renjiro approaching, Hoka began moving forward to engage him. However, Fujin sensed a huge chakra build up by Miko and shouted, "Hoka! Move aside." That shout alarmed Hoka and he turned to see that Miko was weaving hand signs and had gathered almost all of her chakra. He quickly got out of her way and created distance by running to his left. Miko, actually, was very frustrated by this fight. Poor girl had been trying to use Sharingan Genjutsu on her sensei since the start of the fight, but not once did he look in her eyes. Due to her frustration, she launched Fire Dragon Jutsu, and nearly poured all her chakra in it. Fujin's clone sensed that and used Great Breakthrough Jutsu. He timed his jutsu just after Miko launched hers, and tried to limit the range of his jutsu to just cover her Fire Dragon. The result increased the power and the size of the dragon. Not wanting to take that jutsu head-on, Renjiro flickered away. The power of this jutsu really surprised Hoka and Miko. Especially Miko, who was awestruck by it. Fujin was still keeping an eye on Renjiro. He noticed that Renjiro had flickered without using any hand signs, and had flickered just enough distance to barely dodge the jutsus. He thought, sigh, that's the first time he has used a ninjutsu. Anyways, it seems like this fight is pretty much over. Hoka has taken quite a beating. So has Miko, and she is out of chakra too. Only I am still fine. Sadly, there's not much me and my clone can do. Not having a good long-range jutsu sucks though. Despite being perfectly hidden, there's not much I can do. Right then, Fujin suddenly used body flicker jutsu purely with his instincts. However, right when his feet left the ground, a hand came out of the ground and caught his right leg. This caused him to fall forward, at a very rapid speed. Luckily for him, he managed to put his arms forward, ensuring that his face didn't get badly damaged. Soon, another hand clutched the back of his neck and pinned him to the ground. He realized that it was Renjiro's chakra signature and thought, what the fuck? I didn't sense him at all. He soon got his clone's memories. His clone had been dispelled, and Hoka and Miko had been defeated. He thought, a clone? But when? On thinking a bit he realized, was it when the dust provided him cover? But I had almost immediately begun sensing him. Was that fraction of a second enough for him to make a clone and hide it, or his main body? And why didn't I sense him? I should be able to sense anyone sensing me. Heck, even if someone merely looks at me, I sense that too. Renjiro thought, he was able to see an attack coming? No, that doesn't seem right, my chakra control was perfect. It seems like he decided to move purely on his instincts. He then took his hand off Fujin's neck and said, that's enough. Follow me. Fujin followed Renjiro to where Hoka and Miko were. Both were lying on the ground. He thought, poor kids. They really got beat up. Both their faces are swollen. And there are bruises even on their limbs. Renjiro, who had beaten up these two and dispelled Fujin's clone, dispelled himself. Fujin then looked at Renjiro and thought, did he beat these two up to curb their arrogance? Well, whatever, I hope they think more now. After getting his clone's memories, Renjiro looked at Fujin in a new light and thought, very good. He was successfully able to hide from my clone not only once, but twice. If not for the fact that his clone had only half his chakra, my clone might not have been able to identify him as a clone. He has a very good mindset. Unfortunately, he doesn't have any good long-range jutsu. Which meant that him hiding such a long distance away was disadvantageous to him as well. Also, he gave up a bit too quickly after I caught him. Something I should correct, though I suppose it did save him from receiving a beating. A shame really, though he doesn't seem as arrogant as the other two, some beating would have been good for his development. Luckily for Fujin. He was totally oblivious of Renjiro's plans and thoughts. He then looked at Hoka and Miko and thought, but that still makes him much better than these two. Sigh, which genin engages a jounin in a head-on confrontation. But other than that, their skills are very good. Hoka is very good at taijutsu and he is very fast too. And Miko's fire release jutsus were quite strong for a genin. I'm still surprised by the combo attack of Fujin and her. While Renjiro was engaged in those thoughts, both Hoka and Miko got up. Though they still were groaning and looking at their sensei with a lot of complaints. Miko also looked begrudgingly at Fujin, who seemed to be in a much better condition. Renjiro of course ignored those looks and said, you have 10 minutes. Sit here quietly and think about our little spar. I'll ask you some questions after 10 minutes and I expect you to answer them. Fujin sat down and began to analyze the fight. Hoka and Miko did that too, however they were still looking at Renjiro angrily. All three genins began analyzing and had the same first thought, an elite jounin is incredibly strong. while Fujin had to take some effort to dig up information on Renjiro. Hoka and Miko got it very easily from their parents. Renjiro's exploits were common knowledge among the shinobi who fought in the Third Great Ninja War. That had made them a bit more respectful of Renjiro. After the 10 minutes were up, Renjiro asked, "The first question for you, when did I make a clone?" Fujin raised his hand and replied, "Most probably when you punched the ground and raised a dust cover." Miko, who was thinking hard, replied, "Yes. I don't think there was any other opportunity for you to make a clone." Fujin could sense anger in her voice due to being beaten up. Hoka was still confused though. He asked, "But sensei, why couldn't my Byakugan see you?" Renjiro replied, "There are ways to hide even from the Byakugan. Take this as a lesson that just because you don't see it, doesn't mean you can relax and put your guard down." Hoka nodded with a conflicting expression. Knowing that the pride of his clan wasn't foolproof was a big blow to him. Fujin then asked, "But sensei, how were you able to approach me from underground and still hide your chakra? Also, how did you keep a track of where I was, without letting me sense you back?" Renjiro replied, "There are ways to hide from a sensor. Also tricks to sneak up on a sensor. Just because you don't sense anyone, doesn't mean that you should completely drop your guard." Miko was the next one to ask a question. She asked, "Sensei, how did you fight me without even once looking into my eyes?" Renjiro smirked and said, "The Uchiha clan has been using Sharinans for hundreds of years. There are many ways to combat your Sharinan too. The one I showed you was just the most basic one." The answers made all the three genins fall into a deep thought. Fujin especially was very worried. He thought, does that mean if someone was spying on me, I wouldn't even have an idea? This thought worried him. However, he calmed down on thinking, well, he is an elite Jounin, capable of leading a whole battlefront. Surely Konoha won't send an elite Jounin to spy on a nobody. I should still be safe. Renjiro cut the thoughts of his students and said, "Now all three of you will think and tell me why you lost. And tell me how you could have performed better. Hoka, you first, followed by Miko and then Fujin." Hoka thought for a bit and said, "You countered my gentle fist and I couldn't land even one hit on you. Also my Byakugan couldn't see your clone. And you were also a lot faster than me or anyone else." Renjiro then looked at Miko who replied, "Your taijutsu is much stronger than ours. And you were always able to dodge all of our attacks, no matter how thorough we were. Also you knew exactly how to counter each one of us." He then looked over to Fujin who said, "Our teamwork wasn't proper. We barely ever even spoke to each other. I saw Hoka and Miko tag team against you, but they weren't in sync with each other. And I, despite being hidden, couldn't help much from such a long distance. And we didn't have any plans to defeat you. Not to mention." Fujin paused for a few moments and continued, "You were just too strong for us to handle." Renjiro nodded and thought, decent. Hoka's tactical thinking would have to be developed more, but the other two are much better. He then said, "All right, this is it for today. You can go home and heal yourself. We will meet here tomorrow at 5 a.m. You have one assignment for tomorrow. Write down your daily routine and bring it tomorrow. And Fujin, stay here. Hoka, Miko, you two can leave." On getting the permission to leave, they said goodbyes and left. Fujin did have to suppress his urge to laugh as they both were walking very weirdly. Though that urge went away very quickly as he had a horrifying thought, wait. I was the only one not beaten up. So he didn't make me wait for. He quickly got rid of that thought, no way. He's a reputed commander from a great ninja war, he won't be so petty. He screamed internally, where the fuck are those human rights activists? Also, why the fuck didn't that old monkey make laws to prevent child abuse despite warming the Hokage seat for decades? Fujin kept seeing his teammates walk away in a weird manner, while desperately hoping that his thoughts won't ever come true. Chapter 38, Light Morning Workout. In Training Ground 17, Fujin and his new sensei were alone. Renjiro asked, "Why didn't you use swords during the spar?" Fujin replied, "'Cause I don't have any. I checked the prices, and even the cheapest one costs 12k ryo. Sadly I can't afford them." The answer was within Renjiro's expectations. He nodded and said, "I'll be teaching you how to wield swords from now onwards. Don't worry about the swords, I have a few you can use. We will first test your skills and also the size of the sword that'll suit you. After that, the third Hokage will order 2 custom-made samurai swords for you." Fujin nodded and thanked him. Renjiro took out a scroll, laid it on the ground and rolled it open. Fujin noticed that it was a storage scroll. And looking at the number of storage seals, he probably was the one who made it. Renjiro made a hand sign and 12 swords appeared on the scroll. Fujin picked up 2, which were very similar in size to the ones he already used and said, "Sensei, the ones I used in the academy were of this size." Renjiro replied, "All right. We'll start with these then. Let's have another spar. I wanna see how good your sword skills are." Fujin and Renjiro then sparred to compare their sword skills. While sparring, both had different thoughts. Fujin was happy that his sensei wasn't the same monster he was earlier. Renjiro on the other hand had mixed feelings about Fujin's swordsmanship. He thought, this kid's basics are extremely solid. Especially considering that he has only trained with swords for less than a year. However, apart from the basics, he has nothing at all. There's no style to his swordplay. It's just a simple straightforward attack and defense. While he has been attacking and defending well, it's only due to him leveraging his speed and strength. If I were to increase my speed and strength to match his, he most probably won't even last 5 seconds. The spar continued for a few minutes more before Renjiro halted it. He concluded, he's like an unpolished jade. Not having any other styles means that he doesn't have any bad habits. While in the long run it may be disadvantageous, but for practicing just one style, this would be very convenient. Of course, since he hasn't practiced any styles yet, I can't say how fast or slow he will be at learning the samurai saber techniques. Renjiro then suddenly increased his speed to match Fujin's and skillfully hit both his swords consecutively to create an opening, and then placed the tip of his sword very close to Fujin's throat. He said, "All right, that's enough. I'll teach you some new forms." He then displayed a few forms for Fujin and asked him to copy and practice them. The training continued for 3 hours, after which Renjiro dismissed Fujin. After dismissing Fujin, Renjiro reported to Hiruzen. On entering his office, Hiruzen asked him, "So how were the kids?" Renjiro replied, "Very promising, old man. They are much stronger than an average genin. Hoka is already at Chuyunin level in terms of taijutsu. And Miko is the same in terms of ninjutsu, though her chakra reserves need to increase. Fujin's ninjutsu isn't bad either. Though his ninjutsu was weaker than Miko's, he was more skillful with them. And his chakra reserves are higher than hers. The most surprising thing is that his tactical thinking is already on par with someone who has gone through many missions. And, even though they didn't actively strategize, they were smart enough to take advantage of the openings provided by their other teammates. Even if I had conducted a test, they would have easily passed it to become genins." Hiruzen nodded and thought, just as their results indicate. Though Fujin's tactical prowess is surprising to hear. I guess that is why he was able to easily rank first in the written exams. He then asked, what about Fujin's sword skills? Renjiro shook his head and said, I can't say yet. His basics are good, but whether he can learn further or not depends on his talent and the effort he puts in. Hiruzen replied, all right. I'll leave it to you, and dismissed him. Next day, Fujin got up at 4:20 a.m. and thought, I thought waking up at 5 a.m. was too early. Now this guy asks us to gather there at 5 a.m. Not to mention, that training ground is over 15 fucking kilometers from my home. Sigh, whatever. I guess I'll get a good morning run at least. Not sure if his training will be as intense as my morning workouts, so I could increase the pressure applied by the seal on my body during that run. Fujin reached the training grounds just before 5 a.m. and saw that both his teammates were already there. He wished them good morning and waited for Renjiro. Renjiro appeared right at 5 a.m. and said, morning. The kids wished him back. Renjiro began by saying, from today onwards, we'll meet here daily at 5 a.m. Our mornings will begin with rigorous physical training. He then looked at Miko and said, Fujin's and Hoka's physiques are very well developed. However, Miko, you don't have any seals on your body to help build your physical strength, do you? Miko shook her head. Renjiro said, today, you'll ask your parents to get that seal for you. And get the seal before this week ends. Miko nodded and said, yes, sensei. He then looked at Hoka and Fujin and asked, how much maximum pressure can your seals apply? Hoka replied, maximum, it can apply 125 kilograms weight. Fujin replied, mine can apply a maximum weight of 250 kilograms. Hoka looked at Fujin with a bit of jealousy as his seal was better. Renjiro then asked, all right, and how much percent of the pressure do you two use? Hoka replied, 30%, and Fujin replied, 13.5%. On hearing Hoka's reply, Fujin sighed internally. No wonder he can keep up so easily with me. Whereas Hoka's mood cheered up as he thought, even though his seal is better, I apply more pressure on my body. Miko, on the other hand, was upset and annoyed, thinking, no wonder these two move so fast. Why didn't anyone ever tell me about this method to get stronger? Renjiro thought, really impressive. It seems that I can make their physical training more rigorous than I had planned. He said, all right, let's begin with our training. And Team 3 began their first training session under their new sensei. Everyone was very enthusiastic. Getting personally trained by an elite jounin would be really helpful. No matter what their dreams were, becoming an elite jounin would be the minimum requirement for them to reach. Only after that could they think of making their dreams a reality. In the first 30 minutes, all three were very energetic. In the next 30 minutes, their enthusiasm died down. After 1 hour, Miko could barely keep up with the training. Even an aloof Hoka could clearly notice that she was trying her hardest to hold back her tears. Hoka could still keep up and was the only one looking forward to the next 3 hours. Fujin could keep up too, but he had a very bad feeling. After 2 hours, Fujin was badly regretting the decision he made in the morning. He thought, which fucking demon put the thoughts of turning up the pressure of the seal to fucking 25% for the morning run to this training ground? When the training finally ended at 9 a.m., Hoka and Fujin dropped to the ground. They could barely even move any muscle. Miko had already dropped unconscious sometime earlier. Neither Fujin nor Hoka were aware when exactly, but Renjiro picked her up and laid her under a tree. Fujin would have screamed for child protection laws, but he was too tired to even think about it. He noticed that Miko got up a few minutes after the training ended, and that felt very fishy for some reason. Looking at that sight, Renjiro chuckled internally. He said, No need to overreact so much. It was merely a light morning workout. Now get up and move under that tree. They both barely got up and wobbled somehow to those trees and sat there, while resting their backs on the trunk of the tree. Renjiro then tossed a couple of ration bars and a water bottle to all three and said, "You can rest here for the next hour. Eat those ration bars and hydrate yourself, preferably after half an hour. I'll meet you here again at 10. He then flickered away. As soon as he left, both Fujin and Hoka slid down and began sleeping. This pissed Miko, who said loudly, "Wake up you two, we can't sleep all day." That woke the two of them up. Hoka dismissively replied, "We didn't sleep for over an hour during the workout." Fujin continued in the same tone, "Yeah, wake us up after 30 to 40 minutes. And they both went back to sleep. Miko was very annoyed and made some noise, but both were too tired to respond to her antics and just ignored her. After around half an hour, Miko woke them both up. As soon as they woke up, they ate the ration bars and emptied the water bottle. The short nap brought their energy levels up, but didn't do much to stop the muscle ache all over the body. Fujin sighed and said, "I think every single muscle in my body is aching." Hoka replied, "Yeah, same here. I don't think it's gonna stop anytime soon." Fujin replied, "Especially if this has to be done every morning." That sentence scared both Hoka and Miko. Miko asked, "No way, right? Unlike you two, I didn't even last the whole workout. How will we do this daily?" Fujin chuckled internally and thought, "Poor girl. She is totally freaked out. Ha ha ha. Still, this sensei. I was upset at not getting a chance to meet Guy and hence not having any opportunity to learn from him. But with this, I don't think it was such a bad thing to not meet him. As insane as this workout was, Guy, probably, still beats this by a long distance. Otherwise there's no way he'd learn the 8 inner gates all the way to the 8th gate." Hoka tried to console Miko and said, "Don't worry. I have been doing such physical workouts for years. After some time, our body will get used to it. And the results will be worth it." That calmed Miko down a bit. However, Fujin thought, "Now that I think about it, this is a good opportunity to curb her Uchiha pride a bit." He countered Hoka by saying, "I don't think that will be the case with Renjiro-sensei. If we get anywhere near being comfortable with this workout, he'll probably change it. Even if that isn't the case, he could just make us increase the pressure on our body." That again freaked Miko out. She quickly asked, "But can't we fool sensei by lying about how much pressure we have applied?" Hoka commented, "Yeah, we can. There's no way for others to check it." However, Fujin countered again, "Even if he can't check it, he'll understand by how tired we are after the workout. So though we could fake the pressure, I don't think we can fool an elite jounin about how difficult the workout is." On being countered again, Hoka wondered what Fujin was up to. He thought, "I'm going out of my way to make her feel better, but Fujin is making her more and more scared." He thought for a bit, but couldn't think of anything and let it go, "Whatever. I don't care. Still though, for a physical workout to push me to this extent, I need to get stronger." Miko tried to think of more ways out, but couldn't think of anything. She had one thought which she was planning to ask her teammates, "Can we ask sensei to decrease the difficulty of the workout?" However, her pride didn't allow her to say that. She decided, "Fine. I'll just work harder and improve my physique. I'm the only one to graduate from my class, which shows how much better I am as compared to others. There's no way a single routine will stop me from achieving my dream." Fujin didn't see the look of determination on both his teammates. His body was still very sore to pay much attention to them. However, another person did. Chapter 39, Rank C Wind Release Jutsus. Renjiro was hiding nearby and watching his young students. Looking at the determined looks of Hoka and Miko, he smiled, thinking, excellent. With this determination, their power will increase very rapidly. Sadly, Fujin isn't looking that determined. He thought a bit and concluded, well, just because there's no determined look on him doesn't mean that he's discouraged. Though he did speak about future challenges, it didn't seem like he wanted to back away. Anyways, I should get a better idea after a few more sessions. If he isn't determined, then I have a few ways to make him determined. If Fujin knew his sensei's plans for him, he would have shuddered. When just 5 minutes of break was left, Fujin and Hoka got up and began stretching. Miko copied them. They weren't sure which crazy session awaited them, and decided to loosen up their muscles. Renjiro soon appeared in front of them and said, before we begin with the next session, let's talk about your routines first. Renjiro then discussed everyone's routine one by one. He planned to train them from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. and from 10 a.m. to noon. For Fujin, there'd be additional 3 hours of training from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. He modified everyone's routines to fit his own training plans. He also recommended everyone their diets. And that involved a lot of ration bars. Renjiro recommended them to eat one at 4:15 a.m., 2 at 9:30 a.m. and another 1 or 2 during lunch. He explained that ration bars were created for ninjas who'd be on very long missions away from Konoha. So they have absolutely everything necessary that a ninja must consume. Apart from that, food items rich in proteins were recommended by him. Fujin groaned a bit at his schedule. He thought, no freaking way. Since when did Jounin sensei begin spending so much time to train their genins? Heck, apart from Kakashi teaching Sasuke Chidori, and Guy teaching Lee, I don't think any of the remaining 10 were taught anything significant at all by their sensei. With him practically taking my whole day, I won't have any time to keep practicing Fuinjutsu or learn any new ninjutsu. I am not sure if the trade-off is worth it. He thought a bit more and sighed, I don't really have a say here, I really hope that the trade-off is worth it. Renjiro began the next training session. Considering how tired his students were, Renjiro decided to let them have it easy. The session focused on teamwork and team formations. Nothing fancy, just the application of what they were taught in the academy. At noon, Renjiro stopped the training and gathered everyone. He then said, Fujin, for today, we'll skip your sword practice. I have another assignment for you. All 3 of you will visit the library and decide what you guys want to learn over the next year. We will discuss it tomorrow. And don't forget, we'll have daily training sessions here at 5 am. Fujin, Hoka, and Miko nodded and thanked him. Hoka and Miko left for their home, whereas Fujin went over to Yakiniku-Q for lunch. Fujin did train hard over the past 5 years. However, nothing came close to what he went through today. Despite the pain, he was actually looking forward to how much stronger this training would make him. After lunch, he went over to the library. He entered the section C of the library and began searching for wind release jutsus. He also wanted to look at rank C earth release jutsus, but he thought, that old freak can sneak up without me even sensing. And given that he has given us this task, I wouldn't be surprised if he is keeping an eye here. I'll just check the rest sometime later. What surprised him was that the number of rank C wind release jutsus exceeded the number of rank D and rank E wind release jutsus. On going through all of them, he made a list. The list of rank C wind release jutsus was Gale Palm Jutsu, Great Breakthrough Jutsu, Spinning Shield of Wind Jutsu, Wind Gale Wolf Jutsu, Wind Dragon Jutsu, Wind Cutter Jutsu, Faithful Wind Blade Jutsu, Wind Instantaneous Body Jutsu, Air Current Wild Dance Jutsu. He had already learned Great Breakthrough Jutsu. So he read the scrolls of the remaining jutsus to get a better understanding of them. After reading, he concluded so Gale Palm Jutsu is basically just a more advanced form of Gale Surge Jutsu. It does provide 360 degrees coverage, but its power is still lacking. Not to mention, Spinning Shield of Wind Jutsu is a much better defensive jutsu. Not only does it defend, but it also reflects back all attacks made on it. Wind Instantaneous Body Jutsu is similar to Body Flicker Jutsu. The body moves along with a gale of wind. It's an escape jutsu. And the user can move over a kilometer. Wind Cutter Jutsu and Faithful Wind Blade Jutsu are offense-oriented jutsus. Wind Cutter basically just uses wind to cut through the enemies. And Faithful Wind Blade needs a sword or kunai or any blade as a base. Using that, it creates a 10 feet long blade of wind. Since it is made of wind, it is almost weightless, and is very sharp and difficult to block. I guess the jutsu that Beiki used was a more advanced form of this jutsu. Air Current Wild Dance Jutsu is a battlefield control jutsu and can be used to restrict enemies. Wind Gale Wolf Jutsu and Wind Dragon Jutsu sound incredibly fun. A wind sphere has to be made, and then the caster has to make a wolf or a dragon from that sphere. But both jutsus take different routes ahead. In Wind Gale Wolf Jutsu, I can make more wolves as I get stronger. Whereas, in Wind Dragon Jutsu, the dragon can shoot out Wind Explosion Jutsu. He began analyzing, once again, these jutsus are very interesting. Most of these jutsus aren't restricted by their ranks, and can perform even as good as an rank S jutsu if the caster is strong enough and has mastered these jutsus to their limits. In fact, Spinning Shield of Wind Jutsu, Wind Gale Wolf Jutsu and Wind Dragon Jutsu are classified as rank CS, depending on how strong their user is. At rank C, Spinning Shield of Wind can only deflect weapons back. But as it is made stronger, it can reflect low-level ninjutsu back, and at its peak, it is said to be able to reflect even rank A jutsus back. For Wind Gale Wolf Jutsu, it's about the number of wolves that can be formed. At rank C, only one can be formed. But at rank S, the caster can make hundreds of these wolves. Something that'll be incredibly useful against an army. For Wind Dragon Jutsu, it's about the size of the dragon and the number of wind explosion jutsus it can spit out. According to the scroll, someone with large amounts of chakra and excellent chakra control could make a dragon that is over a kilometer long and can shoot out hundreds of wind explosion jutsus. Even though the other jutsus aren't stated to be able to reach such a level, I can imagine them to be much stronger. For instance, for Faithful Wind Blade Jutsu, the size of the wind blade could be extended even further. Or it could be made much sharper. Similarly, Wind Instantaneous Body Jutsu could probably be used to move tens of kilometers away. He then calmed himself and thought, the only issue is, why haven't I heard about anyone using these jutsus? Even if these jutsus have that potential, if no one can reach it, then there must be some issue. He analyzed for a few minutes and concluded. I guess using my memories about Naruto is very unreliable. Also, it is very likely that Wind Affinity ninjas in Konoha do practice these jutsus, just that I'm not aware of them. Not surprising. But I do want to know if there was even one character in the past who used these jutsus to their full potential. He noticed, I lost my focus. Let me first decide which jutsus to learn. After analyzing, he decided, I will learn Spinning Shield of Wind Jutsu, Wind Gale Wolf Jutsu, Wind Dragon Jutsu, Faithful Wind Blade Jutsu and Wind Instantaneous Body Jutsu. I don't need the battlefield control that Air Current Wild Dance Jutsu provides currently. And for defense, escaping into the ground and spinning shield of wind jutsu are better options than gale palm jutsu. Wind cutter jutsu could have been useful, but I have another idea. While analyzing the jutsus, Fujin noticed two peculiarities. His thoughts were, wouldn't faithful wind blade jutsu be a better option than chakra flow? It makes me wonder if instead of sending a slash of chakra, I could use this to send a slash of wind in samurai saber techniques. Also, can this be used in conjunction with chakra flow? The others are wind dragon jutsu and wind gale wolf jutsu. The starting point of both of these jutsus is the same. So can I create wolves that shoot out wind explosion jutsu, or can I create multiple dragons? These ideas intrigued him a lot. He decided to experiment with them when he was strong enough to do so. After deciding the jutsus to learn, Fujin thought, alright, decision made. Now I'll dig up this entire library to see if anyone ever used these jutsus to their limits or not. He got up to keep the scrolls back. On getting up he noticed, Miko's here? I didn't even notice. He then tried to sense and noticed, oh, Hoka is here too. And he is in section D.